And we are live. Hello and welcome to the Software Architecture Meetup Group of Vienna. Today our topic will be the dream of the operationless cloud. My name is Rafael Lazenhofer. And now let's present the speakers. Maybe let's start with you, Johannes. Tell me something about yourself.
So I work at Accenture for a project where we implement a greenfield Azure landing zone. So that is completely automated. So the developer can just push their app to that subscription, and everything is provisioned for the app behind the scene, infrastructure-wise and network-wise. Everything just there at a click of a button. So we're right now deploying one live application, the first one, and we want to extend that to the entire project or account if possible. That's it.
Great. So next one, maybe Alf.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm working for Accenture as technology consultant, which means I'm typically working on, let's say, these situations where business requirements meets technology implementation. Yeah, and the reason why this is, I would say, one of the funniest places to be right now is that there is no business topic or any kind of transformational project these days which isn't a huge tech case. Yeah, and technology these days means cloud, and I'm very, very curious to see about how this discussion is moving forward, because a lot of people are thinking about cloud, and there are a lot of dreams, and one of the dreams I always hear is, if we're going cloud, we do not need to have operations anymore. Yeah, that's done by the hyperscalers, and I'm quite curious to see the opinion of the crowd here and today's colleagues. Yeah, to let's see face this entire discussion through different lenses. Happy to be here.
Great, thank you. So, and last but not least, Stephan Niklas.
Hello, everybody. My name is Stephan Niklas. I'm a colleague of Johannes, Ralf, and Rafael. I'm a direct colleague of Ralf as well in the Microsoft Business Group of Accenture. I started my professional career more than 20 years ago in an operations role with an on-premise data center and Windows NT 4.0, where one of the usual tasks was going with a compact disk to the data center and install software. So that's where I'm coming from, and now I'm part of the AMBG and responsible for software development for the Azure cloud. My history is back asset and operations, and spent a couple of years in a DevOps role as well. And I'm curious how this discussion today will be, because everybody of us has a different background and different experience in IT. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for the invite.
Great. So maybe I will introduce myself as well, but I think most of people who are watching the meetup series from the Vienna Software Architecture Meetup Group know me already. So my name is Rafael Lazenhofer. I'm a technical architect at Accenture, working both with Niklas and Alf as well. And about operations in the cloud, I mean, I need to work with them as well, and you just see more and more developers get more into focus on operation than administrative usage like in the past. And so it's a pretty interesting topic, how operations will be managed in the future. So that's why I'm also interested in the topic of the dream of the operationless cloud. And for this reason, well, maybe let's start with the first question. What is the impact in terms of infrastructure as code in the operation field? Who wants to go first?
Johannes, you said you had to have a very huge project these days to run an entire foundation out of infrastructure as code. I think you are the preferred one, huh?
Yeah, thank you. So the impact it's basically the cloud. I think, in my opinion, you can't do cloud on a scale without infrastructure as code. So you have to actually somehow implement infrastructure as code on some level. So either you do it fully with Terraform and Packer and HashiCorp technologies, or Ansible, and stuff like configuration management tools, or you try it like basically with Jenkins file and more lightweight stuff like GitLab YAML, something like that. But moving forward into the future, and actually right now, enterprise clients, like not only for us, but generally enterprise people, enterprises, they also already implemented infrastructure as code. It's not something that is in the future, it's something that is already here. And the more you learn about it, the better you can control that in your group, in your project, the more opportunities you have to exploit every single, all the different services and features of the cloud. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
I think one of the biggest expectations of infrastructure as a code is, and some of the languages, as you said, Johannes, already, Terraform is just one of the solutions, is to get a desired state on the environments. In the past, we often had the issue that someone did change any of these nuts and bolts on the server, and in the middle of the night, on call was called and application isn't running anymore. And there is no change log of things which have been changed by another engineer in the past. And Terraform, Ansible, Puppet, Chef, you name it, all of them are good solutions to get a desired state. And therefore, it's always good to have something in place. It's really hard when you have a given application or an old application or old environments to introduce infrastructure as code there. It's always an iterative process. And as Johannes, as you said, it's not possible to be operationless anyhow without using IaaC tools.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, it sounds a little bit when we are discussing those things at client. For me, it always sounds a bit like this epic battle. Yeah, the good side, yeah, or the Jedi's versus the dark side. Yeah, because you always have those guys who are driving to control others and punish others by policies and cost control measures and a lot of Excel sheets and a lot of things which need to be double checked to ensure that nothing is wrong, is going wrong. And then you have those beautiful guys who are really working on, let's say, sculpting something new out of code, aka developers. and those guys have different ideas or different dreams, to be honest, because every time when we are talking, or when I have the pleasure to talk to development teams at clients, they're always saying, hey, we could be so much faster, we could be so much more agile, we could be so much more value adding to our business if we do not have to take the same bunch of technology which IT is given to us, even in public cloud. It's a drama. And when you're going back to the guys who are telling you something like, have you ever worked with programmers or developers? Those guys are producing blah, 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 throwing it over the fence, yeah, and then nothing is working. So if we do not control them by heart with Excels, with our guys, with our processes, we have no chance to ensure that they are not ruining the company, yeah, within seconds. I think that is the epic battle we are in between. Yeah, it's a little bit this discussion between stability versus agility and exploration. Yeah, and that's what I feel in the field. Yeah, and the question is, when we are talking about operations, what is operations? Huh? I think one topic has been already raised today. One topic is really the entire provisioning stuff. How to get things up and running. And those things are, as you mentioned before, in best case for quality, stability, and reusability, something which is already declarative done. And a lot of organizations, as we also in Accenture, are proposing to use Terraform here. Yeah, because it's, I would say, the industry standard. Most of the clouds, let's say, related technologies are really using Terraform or proposing Terraform APIs already. So I think that's more or less the standard for provisioning. The main problem for me as a guy who can simply, I think I do still have the name of my first NT4 domain controller in mind. I think so. So I'm not even looking older than Stephen. I am. That means how to get a desired state up and running. Because if we have the declaration and we have the provisioning, everything is fine, something is not working, some cool guy with administrative controls is logging in, changing something, now it's working, no, everyone is documenting it. And for whatever God reason, if we are doing something else, it's not working anymore. Yeah. So the thing is really about, for me, not only the provisioning piece, it's also about keeping this desired state by policy controls automated alive. Yeah. And I would say that's the nice story then. Yeah. Because having the declaration and having a kind of technology taking care that this policy is being used and enforced. Yeah. That's where the beauty came in. Yeah. And the second question is, what kind of operation are we talking about? From my gut feeling, moment when we're discussing this question, we are discussing about infrastructure operations, because at the end, any kind of application will need some kind of support. But that's my first idea as to that question. Yeah? It's about this epic battle, and it's about the question how to keep lights on and how to ensure not only provisioning, also policy enforcement without using Excel.
Yeah, Ralph, you brought up a good point, because at least from my experience, developers don't care that much about policies, and developers don't care that much about cost. And even when you're able to provision infrastructure using Terraform, you need to be on top on define your policies as code as well. And that's one of the steps which is quite new to a lot of companies. So I do know about in Azure, there is something as policy code you can just download, modify it, and apply it again. There is an open source tool called Crossplane, which does similar things, but you need to write your policies on your own. So we have the possibilities, and I think one of the major step operations needs to go is apply these policies and have the empowered developers a little bit more under control, as even the product owners, which are on top of the developers, they do like functionality and cost factor and the policy factor, especially in the, for example, the financial industry, needs to be a separation of concerns. Someone who is able to develop something is not allowed to change something in production, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of steps to go to have something operationless anytime in the future.
But Rafael, that sounds a little bit that developers are not the Jedis.
Yeah, the thing is
opinion about that, huh?
I mean, with development, so from now, my team is currently a big part of the operations because this whole environment in the cloud is set up by us, actually. So I was in the trap first, where I also didn't really care about costs, to be honest, because I was just like spinning up services in the cloud in the first place. Then you look at the first month at your bill and you're thinking like, that's not as cheap as I thought. But after a while, and you have a lot of tools also where you can cost automation and stuff like this, it's pretty fine. I think the problem that we're seeing now from the developer perspective is if you have more focus on the operations than on the development, the focus of the developer gets a bit lost. So there's where DevOps people came more into place after a while. So what I've seen from the past things before the cloud, so the classic on-premise approaches, because I reviewed, I think 2 weeks ago, a company that still is on whole on-premise, and they were really confident with this, and it's totally fine because for their approach, it was perfect. They have everything automated with Jenkins, like other firms in my past as well, and a lot of scripting. It's totally fine. It works out. But the problem is they're a small company, and this is always, if something would happen, call that one guy. And
Hey,
it's
Joe.
always it's only always that one guy who knows how to operate this whole Jenkins script. That's I think a 2 or maybe 5 or even 10 years old, and to just like call that guy is I don't know. So definitely policies, and everybody should these days be formed in kind of a team shape from the knowledge set in a developer team, especially in smaller companies, that you would know how to operate things when something would get wrong. So from my perspective, currently my team is really experiences. So the juniors getting involved to how the operations work, and the seniors operating. And we're always trying also to make like for releases operations like a rotating principle, right? So that everybody is getting his part on the operation once in the sprints. So I think this is the thing we should definitely keep in mind. So like build up this T-shape from developer to DevOps guys and stuff like this, that we all know, even in smaller teams, like how to operate things. Any thoughts on this?
There is this famous book, The Phoenix Project. I don't know who has read it, by Gene Kim, and it really describes the thing you just said. There is always this one guy, and there is this famous example of what is a bus factor. How many people can you run over with a bus before operation stops? And when you have a bus factor of 1, as you just explained, it's always bad, and it's always easier to modify a configuration file than get someone who would just run over by a bus from the hospital to type in some lines of code. So this won't work. So yeah, so it's a good read, and I would clearly say and would really recommend it for those who have not read it. It's, I think, 10 years old or something, almost 10.
Oh, I would call it the DevOps Bible, isn't it? Yeah, it's more or less one of the most famous DevOps book ever written. I think I think there's only ebooks available these days because it's so old.
It's
so
also
true.
an audiobook currently on Audible, so if you want to look at it, because my people leader Accenture me actually told about it. So
there's a new book, the Unicorn Project. I think this is the newer one, sequel.
Yeah, follow up for the future, right?
Yeah, I think that's quite recent, maybe 2-3 years old. Not sure. And then there's this DevOps handbook, which is also, but it's more technical. But I think those books are great introductions, but they are not detailed enough. So you have to just, there is no textbook right now that is technical enough. So you can build like a course on it, like a university course. You can't. It's so hard because you need like as a DevOps engineer, you need expertise in at least 20 fields, and you have to combine them, right? You can't. There's no single thing. Like you can't just say like Java developer. Okay, you only need to know Java, right? But DevOps engineer, you need to know Docker, containerization, Kubernetes, Azure cloud, or any kind of cloud, and then like maybe Terraform, maybe Ansible, a lot of stuff. So it's hard to get those guidance.
Do you know the roadmap project? So that's a pretty interesting view on everything. I will pass it in the comment section. They actually made a roadmap for this. So how you can actually become a DevOps engineer, how you can become someone who's doing it, right? And they also published it for a software engineer and stuff like this. Maybe we can also have a look at it. Like
I'm curious, like how did you guys become DevOps engineer, or kind of?
So I'm actually never become a DevOps engineer. It's just like once somebody called, we need something up in the cloud, and and Ralf thinks knows some of the projects where someone asks to do anything. Yeah, it's always like you're an architect, you can do everything, or you should actually, right? So DevOps is just a part, I think, of the skill set. So I'm not the best DevOps engineer. I can build up scripts and somehow, and I can make them run. But I think Stephan, you have more.
The thing is that there is no checklist for how to become a DevOps engineer, because as you said, Johannes, there is a plethora of topics you need to take care, you need to be aware of. I think my personal ebook library about various IT related topics is 30 to 40 books, which I read just when I have the need for some information. So there is information about Kubernetes, there is a combination of information about data mesh, testing and stuff. So I became a DevOps engineer by putting myself in a position between purely operations guys who don't want to even talk to developers, and so I become the let's say in the center point of communication between developers and operations. That's how I become a DevOps engineer. And I think it was a challenge at first. And as you said, you need to have a knowledge about so many topics. And especially when we look towards cloud, it doesn't get easier because we have 3 huge cloud providers. You need to be aware of any of them. You have similar services, which are all of them are called a little bit different, are a little bit in their handling, are they different? So you need experience, and just be curious about any topics you come aware of, and never stop learning. That's one of the things, and never be stop being interested in something, in new technologies, in new software, and be able to experiment is one of the things you really need to do.
Yeah, I still remember the first time I had anything to do with the cloud was 2013 or 14, I think, and that's the time when Amazon Web Services came out. And I mean it came out already earlier, but it's the time when they push it to a larger scale. So I remember I just logged in, and it feels like overwhelming, and I just had to do it because nobody on my team wanted to do it. And so I tried my hands on it, and I really actually loved it. So it's very everything works. You type in a command and it works. It's logical, right? So that's really satisfying. The ability to spin up servers just with a command. That was not possible before. And I think I got a free account, and that's how I started. So maybe just if you want to get started, just get a free account, just spin up some servers and play around with it. Maybe host a website on it and try your own stuff. But it's definitely I never expected that after a few years that I can get a job for this. Like if I told somebody at that time, you know what, I'm gonna work as somebody who is doing cloud stuff, like they were laughing off. What the hell is this? There was no cloud engineer, nobody. Like 5 years, and then we have cloud. And I expect that with metaverse coming up, in 5 years' time, DevOps cloud is going to be history, and then you're going to have metaverse developers, and then you have like DevOps engineers in the metaverse, and and that's crazy. So then what else? You have like virtual reality, like AR. You have like AR as well, and that's a little bit different category. So I think right now it's a good time to actually, you make it your hobby and just code in the metaverse a little bit, because that's going to be the next 5 years. Because right now, if you ask somebody, oh, you want to work as a metaverse engineer, everybody laughs at you, because there's no job for metaverse engineer, right? Except at Meta or something. You type in metaverse engineer, nobody can give you a job. Right?
It always depends on, right? Because I think everybody also said the blockchain will be the future.
No, but blockchain is the future now. I mean, blockchain is here to stay. That's for sure.
Of course. I mean, it always depends on how you use it, right? So I had the discussion actually 2 hours ago when we talk about this whole field. I think this is not the topic of this day, but it always depends on, right? So we have in the past meetups also discussion about data lake, data factory, now the data mesh, right? So currently one of my theses at the university is about the data mesh. And it's actually all the same like we did 10 years ago, but now we have the things to really do it, or the experience in some fields to do it, right? And the same will come with the metaverse, I think, and also with blockchain as it happens. It will be a part, it will get a bit lost from year to year, but it will shift. Because if you also look at VR and AR, what really was the biggest focus of VR? Is it the gaming industry? Is it the healthcare industry? Depends on, right? So you have a use for something, but now when you get a consumer market, it will be getting interesting, especially in terms of metaverse, VR, blockchain, and stuff like this. But
I think what really shifted is that access to technology got much more easier, because
right.
I had my first contacts with AWS in 2013 as well, and in the past, I need 5 servers, took at least 6 to 8 weeks from the order to get your server delivered. And then it took 2 another weeks to get it into the data center. And then it isn't even cabled or has a server name or IP address, so you can access it. And nowadays, it's just a couple of minutes or even seconds, depending on your machine size, to get a VM and a data center, and you don't need contracts with rack space in the US, for example, when you have dependence in there. So that's one of the biggest differences you have now compared to 15 years ago.
Sure, yeah. We have a question actually from the audience, so I will just read it through. So from Roman Zilek, why aren't devs rather abstracting ops away with better requirements and constraint-oriented coding, metrics monitoring, KPI association, service level tracking, etc.? Would you allow self-organized infrastructure as a service?
Oh, that's amazing. This is actually going to be the future. I'm actually trying to work on this, but it's just it's not that easy. Because like I'm not. Have you heard about DAO, like decentralized I think organization or something like that, autonomous organization? So that's like a concept from the Ethereum project, where you have smart contracts that runs the whole business, right? For example, the payroll system at Accenture, if you put it on the Ethereum blockchain, I'm not saying that we should. If you put it on the Ethereum blockchain and you write a smart contract that everybody agrees on, and this smart contract triggers the payment of your salary, obviously in Ethereum in this case, then this smart contract works. And right now it's not at a large scale that a lot of employees can do that. So it's just too slow. But in the future, who knows? Maybe we have the technologies that makes it faster. So that's like similar to this idea of self-governing infrastructure. You can definitely write code that self-governs the entire infrastructure. And the less you need to touch this infrastructure, the more successful you are at this. And I think this is going to be the future. Yeah. Yes, yes, exactly. So you have okay, so like the idea would be like you have DAO controlling the whole business operations, giving out incentives to employees when it's time. I don't know, getting paid from clients, notifying clients when they are not paying on time, and running like HR stuff. And then you have like in your technology stack, you have this infrastructure that is self-healing, self-controlling, everything coming from the running apps in in the runtime environment. It can figure out what apps need. So that's something that already Heroku is doing. You just upload your code and Heroku figures out what you need. And you don't have to even do anything. It just automatically recognizes everything you need. And this is something that we can definitely do in the infrastructure, where we can try to build Heroku or make it even better. So, but that's definitely possible, yeah.
I would like to jump in here because I think it's I think there have been two elements of the question. The first question is a lot about the abstraction layer, for operations, like metrics monitoring, KPI assertion, service level tracking, etc. And I simply would love to ask, how many of the developers which we are working these days are frequently or standardized implementing standards like OpenTelemetry? Just as an idea, And I'm a huge fan of having this abstraction layer, because I do believe that's a question of the next years to come. The second part of the question, which is, would you allow self-organizing IaaS? And that's the fun here, because I would say that's the point where, let's say, reality, meets let's say, future concepts. Because the problem these days, when you're looking on infrastructure as a service, a lot of organizations are not using infrastructure as a service in a, let's say, pure and well declarative way. So that means, for instance, if we're talking about IaaS components like, I don't know, firewalls, network components, etc., or even virtual machines, there is still some, let's say, configuration which is not part of the Terraform script. And then you do have issues, because on the one hand side, you need these operations guys, you need some monitoring agents, you do need to have some patching and all that, let's say, slow, hindering, complex processes, because you need maintenance windows and you need to take care about application availability. And if you do not do the right architecture for high availability, you're paying off in patching windows, etc. That's a horror. So I would rather say, or I would tend to argue, if you are able to limit IaaS components to a minimum, I would say it is not so hard these days to come to an, let's say, operation-free cloud landscape. But what are the things we are really benefiting from? And that's something which I really love to discuss, because on the one hand side, one of the things all the people, or all these classic or traditional, let's say, infrastructure guys are arguing is, guys, we need to have a documented status for whatever kind of audits. And I would argue a proper, let's say, Terraform library is way better documented, than any of those Excels or Confluence pages I've ever seen in the world, because I see every version, I see every deployment over CD/CI pipelines. I definitely know who has done what and when. The only thing is, you really need to do some quality raisements. And the one thing is really what you said about abstraction. So you need to have better code quality. You need to have better integration of monitoring. and give them, on the other hand side, also the capabilities to have a kind of self-healing, whatever that means for the given application. Yeah. And on the other hand side, I think you need to get rid of IaaS. The sooner, the faster you are on the mentioned track. No?
I think maybe Roman, when he wrote IaaS, he probably also meant like PaaS. Like, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure if you can answer that question. Like, what do you mean exactly by IaaS? But yeah, well, definitely, if you can use more PaaS, then it's of course easier to implement self-healing and self-managed infrastructure. But on the other hand, PaaS, like you basically, for example, as an everyday example, I mean, I am struggling right now with Azure Bastion host. Like it's giving me a headache because like sometimes it's flaky. Like I can't log in using the Bastion host, and that's the only way I can log in because I want it to be secure, right? I want to have a jump host that is the Bastion host, and through this Bastion host, I can jump to any virtual machine, and without it, nobody can do it. Like it's private, the virtual machines are private, you can't access them. So if the jump host doesn't work, and you can only have one jump host per resource group or something like that, then what do you do? so like.
But you're referring, but at the end, you're still referring to some VMs you want to connect to.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah, I understand what you mean. But, you know, like, for example, there are also other stuff, like sometimes application gateway. I mean, it used to be the case. Now it's better, but sometimes application gateway is also flaky. And, like, I mean, I noticed flakiness more on Azure than on Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform. Actually, I've never experienced any flakiness in its own service. Like actually, you know, having to raise a technical ticket and say, your service is flaky. Can you please fix it? Like, I've never done that for AWS. I've never done that for GCP.
I would say that's a heads up to the guys in Redmond. James, yeah? We see there's some... we see there is a call to action for you guys.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I just want to go back to Roman's question regarding, of course, we always need better requirements, but when you go to a product owner and ask him how fast should your application be, and the only answer is make it fast. And what is the definition of fast? Is fast a 1 second response? Is fast 3 seconds response? Or is fast 50 milliseconds response? And depending on this answer, we're going to scale up or scale down our infrastructure, which is related to costs. And you can't, there is so much question about requirements and KPIs. And of course, we can measure everything. That's not the issue. But who is reading the metrics? Who is interpreting the metrics right? And who concludes? And what's happening with all this data? Because of course, we can collect it, but understanding it is another different topic.
Actually, yeah, I'm actually curious. Do any one of you know, like, on what infrastructure the metaverse is supposed to run?
No idea actually.
No.
So from the presentation you see from the metaverse, it's just like
no,
I don't know.
It's not technical, right?
It's not technical. It's just like that's my problem actually with the metaverse for now.
I would assume, to be honest, that Facebook is one of those companies who really do have a lot of own infrastructure, which they would, let's say, customize to their purpose and use it. I would say an organization like Facebook is not 100% dependent on, let's say, on AWS or Microsoft or Google. I would say they are putting more effort there.
Maybe.
I would like to take the question from Roman, because I really feel him, yeah. Because you're already if you're going into a public cloud operations model, I think that's important to mention that what we're talking about is that there is already a shared responsibility model. Because at the end, if you're going from infrastructure as a service towards PaaS, towards function as a service, etc., yeah, you're already giving responsibility back and forth. No? For instance, if you're running your own VM, you do have much more responsibility as you're using a storage account, or if you're using a Lambda function or whatever. Yeah, and I would tend to say, yeah, that these, let's say, nature of their way of doing this kind of IT business is more or less the origin about this discussion. Yeah, is this shared responsibility model giving us more or less the chance to rethink how we're doing it? And I would tend to say most of the organizations we are working with do have some, let's say, North Star like projects. They are really on the latest and greatest technology, using the latest and greatest development patterns, methodology, etc. pp. But using that same kind of, let's say, repositories, CDCI practices, etc. also for standard operations is something which a lot of organizations at the moment do not think about, but I do believe it's important to start the discussion about it. Yeah, and at the end, yeah, I do feel at the moment that this could end up in the first iteration in a kind of dual mode of operations, which means, for instance, you do have your classic, let's say, IT services catalogs. I think most of us love that, because every time when you need some kind of service, you're going to a ServiceNow page and ordering some whatever kind of cloud service to get it provisioned by someone. Yeah, and moving more towards a discussion of having a clear repository, having clear quality controls on coding, having clear, let's say, security configuration items, which is more or less part of the policies which need to be enforced, etc. Yeah, so that could be a very, very nice discussion within the IT organizations these days.
Maybe in terms of time, we have a pretty similar question or a thing for now. So I would like start with this one. So
Yeah.
because is a cloud agnostic approach a pro or a con if you want to enable the operational cloud? In terms of the Star concept with things like this would be then an enabler, right? Or not?
I do have a personal opinion on that, and I do have a professional opinion on that. Yeah. So the professional opinion is that most of our clients are really trying to focus to get whatever kind of cloud stuff done with a strategic partner, which I do believe is a good idea, because there are so many services, so many questions, a lot of discussions within the organization. Are you really allowed to do so, especially in Austria and then Germany? So from a professional perspective, I would say, yeah, it's good to focus. It's really good to focus.
I
From
totally
a
agree with you.
personal technical perspective, I would say a clear yes. Because if you do it right from the beginning, you do have a kind of repository based on, let's say, GitLab or GitHub or whatever. Yeah, you do have a CDCI pipeline, which is great. Yeah, and then you do have your hyperscalers, which are more or less the same. Yeah, and you're following the same approaches, and you have very little customizations. And at the end, there's the last one I would like to add here is there are already tools in the market which are, let's say, limiting the efforts here. I would like to refer to a very, let's say, famous project I do really love and follow is Crossplane.io. If you don't know it, watch it, guys, because those guys are, for instance, taking out this complexity of having the different providers there, because they are let's say providing this integration layer, ready to use with connectors, which is a very interesting approach. Yeah. So yeah, personal answer, yes. Professional answer, focus is good.
Stephan?
Yeah, we often have the issue with, we should go cloud agnostic. On the one hand, I understand it from customer perspective, because they won't like to have a login. But to be honest, at the start of a project, my first thought shouldn't be, how can I exit? And why should I go cloud agnostic? Because of course you have a vendor login when you go towards cloud, but one of the bigger issues is you have a vendor logout as well, so you don't profit from any of the SaaS services a cloud provider gives you. It doesn't matter if it's AWS, Google, or Microsoft. But I think the approach would be best is go to the cloud provider which helps you the most solving your issue. For example, if you go to Google, they're good with data because their whole business is built upon data, and they're good on data and AI. When you have to go a workplace migration, it's kind of a no-brainer to go to Microsoft, because the majority of clients are used to Outlook, and some people do like the Google stuff. I personally don't. But when you're coming from a Lotus Notes, it's so completely different from anything. It doesn't matter if you go to Google or to Outlook, you have to relearn everything. And that's one of the biggest issues, that it's not about cool stuff. There will always be people who are not that techy and tech savvy as we are, and they're hard to learn and learn different workflows. So that's one of the things we need to take in as well. And being cloud agnostic helps. It really increases the amount of work which needs to be done up front before you have any functionality out. Because you need to take care of why is a VM in Terraform called differently for Azure, and why is it called differently from AWS? So you have to write the code anyway twice for the same functionality, and even testing in a CI/CD pipeline will make it different, because all of the things, even when they provide on the basis the same functionality, for example a VM, the monitoring is different, the testing is different, the naming is different, and so on and so forth. So it's sometimes it works, but it's a really huge effort to be cloud agnostic. And even when you say, okay, I'm not bound to one or another cloud, you have already these, you stick anyways to some software providers, because when you go to an identity provider, you stick to CyberArk or ForgeRock or something else. So you already have a product local, and going away from such a central component isn't that easy anyways. So where is your infrastructure hosted shouldn't be the first question you ask, and how to go away when you just started a 3-year project, how to go away in 3 years maybe.
Yeah, maybe for this, just like to add up the second question. So, is there a certain strategy how you can deal with these approaches? So an easy way how you can enable cloud agnostic these days, because once I was looking into standardization, and there are products as well, and you can just like say everything in Kubernetes or deployment pipelines and deployment files and stuff like this. But is there a good way to deal with a cloud agnostic, or a common way for you?
You can potentially do everything in the Kubernetes cluster, right? And then you can just take all your Kubernetes cluster YAML files from one cloud provider to the next. That's no problem. Unless you need some sort of like pure cloud-specific service, then you have to stick to that, and you have to think of a way how to port them into another cloud provider. And I think the best thing I can come up with is if you write everything in Terraform anyway, then for Terraform, they have providers for different kind of cloud providers, right? You have providers, Azure RM, you have GCP, and then you have like AWS. So technically, it's possible that you can, whenever you write the code for one cloud provider, at the same time, you also write the code for the same feature on a different platform. I mean, it's a headache because you have to know everything about these free platforms. You have to be an expert in all three, but it's possible. And so first thing is, as I said, as a summary, if you want cloud agnostic setup, then just go for all-in Kubernetes. If you want to kind of have a mix with Kubernetes, and I mean, if you have no choice but to stick to some sort of service that is not on Kubernetes, then try to rely on Terraform to code both infrastructures. So that's probably it.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, I think that the question was, is there an easy way? And the answer is, as always, not for everything. But I would say, yeah, sorry, Johannes, you're right. Yeah, but the thing is, really, if you would say, for instance, you're focusing on cloud native, for instance, and not for everything, and you keep out things like infrastructure as a service, yeah, and you tend really to also raise your bars in software quality, and also about monitoring, and get also your feed into this all discussions about, it's not about SLAs anymore, it's about SLIs, SLOs, etc. Yeah, I think the easiest way is to say there are some strategic programs in your organization, yeah, which are focused on time to market and quality. That's number one. And for those, really think about implementing stuff like Crossplane for this policy enforcement, and centralized repository stuff, yeah, and then start building more or less your service catalog in kind of code, yeah, because also get things like, for instance, someone is writing a Terraform script for a managed Postgres database on one of the cloud providers, and you're using a kind of peer review, bringing that back to the Git repository, and then bring in such a kind of community approaches within your own organization. Yeah, let's say, for instance, this is reviewed, the quality is good, and we are pushing it. Yeah, and we're giving this as a contribution to the organization, and the next project and the next developers and the next team can use it. Yeah, and so get a kind of community, let's say, approach into it, and start exploring. I would say there is no ready-to-buy solution for it in the field, yeah. But I would say higher quality standards, faster time to market, better security, better audit qualities, etc. Yeah, it's worth to invest time there, and it's worth to invest efforts. I would say that's my prayers to the community in that way. Yeah.
Actually, I just one question on Crossplane. I'm just checking it. That's not interesting. I mean, like, what is that a tool that can replace Terraform? Like, is it a tool that
No,
has?
you connect it. It's just a policy. It's a policy. Let's say policy enforcement, and an integration layer for the cloud providers. So you can use Terraform. You can use your whatever kind of preferred repository. You can also use your standard CD/CI pipelines and integrate it, and ensure that all the things you have, for instance, yeah, already provisioned stay in the same quality over using it. And that's the fun here. But I would say that's one of the things, how to get your feet into it.
Yeah, that
And
sounds
I don't want to say it's the only solution. I would say it is one of the pathways into this field. But once again, I think the time is now to start the discussion and start the first, let's say, plans within your organization to do so.
Right, we have another question.
Oh, yeah, of course. From the comment section, yeah. Roman. Agnostic abstraction on a higher software architecture abstraction level is driving argument for BDD as well. Behavior and demands expressed in closets to business logic and cultural as possible.
I need to get my head around this question. 1 second. Do it again. What does he mean by that? Like he sounds kind of, he knows the vocabulary, but like, can you if it's not too public, can you tell us, like, are you working also in the same space, or like?
No, that's no one who has ever worked in IT. Pretty sure. Sarcasm.
He's listening. You know that.
No, it's sarcasm, and I know Roman knows that I'm saying. That I'm using sarcasm right now.
What does he mean by that? Agnostic on a higher. Okay.
Right.
I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, it's not even a question.
I think it isn't a question. I think it's a statement, which should
it's about the behavior.
An extra, let's say, statement towards, which means you're on the right way. You're on the right track, guys.
Oh, right,
absolutely right.
It's. I think BDD stands for the behavior-driven development, right?
Right.
So another approach into the other ways of development that we know so far, right? It's also taught in university. Ooh, cloud agnostic. Right. YouTube discussed before.
Okay. Nice. It's good to have like commentators. I really like that.
Perfect. Great, yeah. So we're on the right track. That's a good
How many viewers do we have? I'm curious.
Today is a bit a smaller group of 5 people on the live room. Normally we're about 10 people, but maybe also for just like a pre-up for the next sessions for the guys who's also watching the recording, because as Ralph, you know this pretty well, we had this in the past that actually the recordings were more of a thing than the actual event itself, from our customer perspectives in some scenarios. But yeah, let's see. Oh, another comment. Keyboard too intelligent.
Don't be a troll.
Well, that's a common pattern for me in while using smartphones and having this auto-correction stuff. Yeah, always drives me crazy.
Yeah. It's a fantastic tool, but sometimes it's not very helpful.
All right. So what's the next question we have?
Yeah. So we have some other questions as well. So I was just like a bit moving up terms of the discussion we had. But one is from the developer perspective. I discussed some within a group. So how to reduce actually operation efforts instead of shifting them due to the constraint we've seen.
Right.
In the past, as you all know, we always talked, okay, we don't need administrative people in some cases. Yeah, we know that the people working still in data centers, so there's no magic unicorn that drives SSDs into a rack, right? But how we can actually reduce it, because we've seen in the past in some short projects.
Robots to do that. You can use
you can use robots to do that. Yes, that's right.
And I'm pretty sure AWS is using robots.
I was once with the school actually in Mediaprint in Vienna. So they showed us how they're using the whole paper robots to fill up the printers. So yeah, totally. You can do everything with robots. It's just like simple tasks.
and then you only need a DevOps engineer who writes the code to provision the robot,
and then we need
what to do.
Yeah, in the future we will have a DevOps engineer who is writing an AI to do his work that does actually optimization and just getting you.
I think you're absolutely right, guys. No, it's an automation discussion which we are in at the moment.
Yeah.
And automation always comes with some positive side effects, which means higher standardization, higher quality, and easier, let's say, correction of issues or things which aren't working. Yeah? But on the other hand side, yeah, and I think that's really important if we're talking that way. We are not talking about shifting operations from infrastructure services towards application developers. Yeah, it's really about automation and get rid of them.
Yeah, cutting human labor. I mean, like, what does it say? Adam Smith wrote in Wealth of Nations this sentence, like, abridging labor. So business people try to constantly abridge labor, so you can get a higher yield out of your production capacity or whatever. So like we're doing that. So I mean, like the first like a lot of times, I mean, I don't hear that in our company because we're doing it, but I hear it sometimes from outsiders. They would always come back with this argument, this, like, oh, you are destroying jobs. Like,
Yeah. It's
because
it's
the guy who's putting the servers on the rack, he's gonna lose his job.
Yeah,
But
I mean, we are
Johannes,
in the
I cannot tell you how. I cannot tell you how many decades I'm already destroying jobs and always putting a comment in LinkedIn or whatever is the tool of the time, which says something like #we are hiring. Yeah, so that's more or less one of the paradox situations. Yeah, as always. Yeah, the let's say we are talking about having someone who knows the name of his his NT4 domain controller by name.
Can you tell me what is that thing?
Forget it. It's long ago, and I'm happy that I'm not used to do it anymore. But there is a machine which have a name, which have a very dedicated, let's say, functionality, and there is someone who really cares about it. Yeah, like seeing every day, patching it, feeding it, having some nice strokes on the back, talking to the machine like, "Are you behaving well? I'm promising to be good to you." I think that kind of work is what we are getting rid of through cloud, anyways, through the operating model. And on the other hand side, if we get rid of those people who are forced to use jump hosts, which are now working as expected, to log on to VMs, I think it's a good contribution to your work-life balance, Johannes.
Yeah, it's true. Definitely.
That was really sad. That's true.
Anymore. I mean, like, I'm just curious if, with your, say, because you, Stephan and Ralf, you're from like the also old IT like times, right? You've seen it.
No, we also earned money in these old days. That's
yeah, right. No, what I want to know is that the knowledge that you have about this old IT, does that help you with the new cloud, or is that not necessary?
Yes.
Okay.
For me personally, it's helping me to let's say build the bridges. Yeah, because at every time in life, if you're talking transformation, you always need to build bridges to get from A to B, and this bridge always do have a starting point. And in a lot of organizations, we do have huge organizations who are doing actually what I'm a kind, let's say, saying like the old days. But in a lot of organizations, that's huge workloads. And a lot of people are doing that with passion, with a lot of contribution, with a lot of also emotions to benefit for the organization. Yeah. So it's not about that these days are not good. I would say the these kind of technologies and integrations we do have at the moment would give us leverage to have a different discussion and think about how to get those people, yeah, into more or business closer projects. Because you can talk to anyone you like these days in Europe, Asia, North America, Africa, wherever, and ask, do you have issues in getting the right IT people you need? And everyone says something like, we are hiring. Yeah, because the demand is outstanding. Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah,
and if we get people,
it's weird because it's pandemic. Like you would think that no jobs anymore.
Yeah, the one thing, the problem with this always let's hire. Nobody wants to build up the people anymore, right? So everybody wants to hire. We have programs, right? But this like mentoring program, you see like lots of younger developers stepping up. There are a lot of code academies and stuff like this, but the practical approaches and where it's getting deep inside of a lot of topics, this is the thing that's getting more and more lost. Because of course you can write a web page, you can make some React, you can do the code academy. It's totally cool, and you will definitely find something. But you need kind of a mentorship or something where you can learn from the older people, so the senior people, like
to be honest, I would really like to step up here, because I do not have the same experience in the field. I do feel there are a lot of organizations these days who really think about how to get things done by also upskilling their own people. And the simple reason why is because if you do not get anyone from the free market, there is no business case for that. And I'm sorry, Johannes, that's what you mentioned before about the business people and trying to optimize yield, yeah? But that's reality on the one hand side. On the second hand side, I would say it's also a part of let's say cultural mindset or culture in your organization. If you already reach the level where a kind of constant learning is part of your corporate or private culture, these days are phenomenal for you. Because if you're keeping curious and you always use the projects or the engagements you're in to do something which you've never done before, yeah, it's the time for it. And you always find a place to do so, yeah. But that's really a lot about your own mindset, yeah. And there are organizations who are, let's say, are working more prominent with it, and I'm happy to say that part of our Accenture DNA is here a little bit, is here on the right side, because it's part of our business model we need to do, because otherwise we are getting irrelevant.
Yeah.
But if you're looking in organizations who, for instance, have spent over the last 50 years, or earned in the last 50 years their money in facilities with blue-collar workers, and their USP haven't been IT. Their USP have been that we do have the right people who know to get this drill in the exact measurement better than any other in the world. Yeah, they never would think about getting those kind of IT mindset. But these days, and as you said before, even hidden champions, which are medium-sized companies, cannot produce anything without being digitally enriched, being IT fueled, and therefore these kind of discussions and also this kind of mindset and cultural change need to take place. Otherwise, you're out of the game.
Yeah, I just heard. I'm a subscriber to this podcast called Business Breakdowns. It's on Spotify. I really highly suggest that to and they usually talk about startups. And today they talked about McKinsey, which is actually in many ways our competitor, because we do have a management consulting branch, and they also do some tech, but not that much. And we are both in the consulting business, and I'm just so fascinated how they train their people. So
Right.
so it's like this. So as a summary, you walk in, you're say a new hire, right? And this is your first project. Then you have this like a guy who takes care of your like project progress, who is like your counselor, who is like trying to figure out where in which project you should be placed next, and how to place you so that you can stay in a project that it's borderline hard for you, but not too hard so that you can still perform. So it's like it's crazy. And then they have another set of people whose full-time job is to help you to find the next project, or to actually help you with the current project, like your own project management office, like a personal kind of thing. And then they have like supervisors, and then they have like and also not so during the performance review, it's not only the guy at the top, like your supervisor, who gives you the review. It's also you who gives the review to the supervisor, and that also counts, like I don't know how much percent, but it also counts towards his progression. So that's great. I think it's a great. I mean, we need to learn from them. Like having somebody like an office that is solely focused on where to place you next, or is this the right project for you? Are you exploiting all your abilities in that project? Or are you better spent, say, your time is better spent somewhere else? And if so, let's do it ASAP. And I'm not sure. I mean, we do have systems like that, but I think McKinsey in that regard is probably more efficient at this point.
I think
so
we
to be
have.
honest, I do like the explanation, as you said, yeah, and I think from the perspective of someone who is more or less in the middle of the system, yeah, which means on the one hand side, one part of my daily business is to raise that questions for my counselees. What is the next best project? How to get their skills into a project where they can shine, and also get the next step, etc. pp. I think it's a lot about time and availability, for instance. Yeah, sometimes we do have. I do have the situation that there are projects which are perfectly fine for people who I'm responsible for, and unfortunately they are still working in another project for, let's say, 3 to 4 months. Yeah, and so I would say there is a let's say tension between perfect and good. Yeah. But what I'm really proud of is that we, as you mentioned before, we are also taking this kind of employee feedback also as part of the scores in the performance reviews for the managers. I think that's super important these days. Not only these days, but it's super important and good that we've done it. And on the other hand side, I think there is a huge movement to all of the companies who are in this field. Yeah, because also our friends from McKinsey and etc. Yeah, are driving constant improvement, yeah, to their way doing business operations. And I think that's the beauty of companies like ours, that we are not staying on the same level for 12 months.
Yeah, for sure. But maybe let's get back to the topic of the meetup.
Yeah, automation.
Because maybe last question for today, because we have for the next 5 minutes. So what are the prerequisites in terms of the operationless cloud to automate operations during the runtime? So maybe to explain the question a little bit to our audience, the thing is, automation, to put something in production is pretty interesting, but how to manage it during the runtime, because we have seen a lot of things like, oh, something is not working in the production, and you again call that guy or that group of developer or things to fix it. So what are your approaches in this scenario?
Well,
yeah, my first answer would be we do not like to fix things these days. We like to redeploy things. That would be one of my first answers.
And I think we are testing, still not testing enough.
I mean, you wouldn't put anything to production unless it's already 100 times tested, and it's,
of course,
you know, there is no way you are allowed even to put that into production. I mean, you could potentially do, like, say, failure management, like fault tolerance management stuff. You know, having 3 parallelly running production services, and all of them are completely fine, like a replicate. Identical replicate, right? And then you just like switch the DNS pointing to each one of these endpoints. Whenever there is a failure, you just switch to the other one, and then you don't fix the one that is broken. You just delete it, and then you spin up a new one that is working, right? And then you just keep doing that. So this is a good approach. So the first answer to that, as Ralph said, like, just we would never ever even allow not running processes to be productive ever.
I think you said a lot of right things. Huh? I would say, and sorry to say that without sarcasm, I don't get it. It's late on the these days. But at the end, I would say one thing you need is a kind of central source of truth about repository. And central source of truth is something we are discussing in IT, I would say, over decades. So I would say there is a need for a centralized repository. It needs to be properly managed, and there need to be some kind of processes to get those components back into the community. I think that's important. The second part is you need to have those kind of, let's say, maturity, that everything you're provisioning is not provisioned by hand or manually. It's provisioned by infrastructure as code and delivered by a kind of continuous deployment or continuous integration pipeline endpoints. And then you have all the beauties which you can integrate, like integrated quality testing, like SonarQube, for instance, or if you do have some kind of automated testing routines, which can be integrated there as a quality gate as well.
So maybe a thing we are currently doing in the field of testing, because Stephan mentioned it as well, because we need to test more. I'm totally onto this. So new approaches, or not new maybe, but in terms of microservices and stuff like this, it's get more and more complex these days, right? So you should also be implementing things like, for the contract-driven development and even other stuff. But here we have a good question.
Yeah. One of the things I want to add before I go to the question from Alexander, I think a lot of patterns are still not, at least in the enterprise, on the big companies, is a lot of software patterns are still not there. So blue-green deployments are not there. We don't have circuit breakers. There is, and coming back to Alexander's question, hardly any company has implemented chaos engineering and tested with chaos engineering, because then you have all the issues you have in the live environment with network delays. Software isn't working well because a DNS entry is missing, and so on and so forth. And all of these things can be handled with chaos engineering. But you're absolutely right. When someone did a configuration error, even in a good managed repository, it won't stop you from a downtime. As we had, I think, I'm not sure, I think Facebook was offline because of wrong DNS entry in Twitter, Instagram and stuff. So
not even the website. I think also the entry systems
WhatsApp,
for the buildings,
everything.
They haven't been able to get into their buildings as well.
Oh my god!
Because the door lock environment has been also unable to work. Yeah.
Wait, don't tell me that they built everything centralized for WhatsApp and even the door stuff.
It have been a DNS error.
Okay.
I mean, It's not the first time that I've heard the door was locked, and that's why it's happening. Because I expected this in other companies as well. It's crazy. It depends always how much
Right.
security do you have for things that can actually block you in scenarios like this as well.
But wait, what was that? Like just DNS that? So it's outside their control.
No, they have their own ones. But coming back to the question, I would say 2022, end of March, there is no given signal on the market that a kind of, let's say, operationless cloud is reality. Because a lot of things, as you said before, Stephan, are missing out. But as said before, I would say it's the right time to pick some strategic projects and to get your feet into this direction. That's what I would like to say. Because that is more or less what Alexander said, guys. Even with full test coverage, at the moment we have so many systems which are manually configured, for instance, or whatever. There is a lot of unexpected failure, and then you need some guys who are going to work on it, and that's absolutely right. Yeah, but I would say it's the starting point, and the destination should arrive before you're joining the metaverse, as Johannes said before.
Has anybody tried Chaos Monkey from Netflix?
Oh my gosh!
Not now, but I heard already about it.
I want to try it for my landing zone, actually. I think it's somehow just bombs or destroys randomly your services or something like that.
Yeah, right.
But that's
absolutely
great practice.
So I would be absolutely happy, to be honest, if we come into a situation where we have a proper defined integrated security layer, a proper defined used CDCI routine, and a situation where most of the things are not created or provisioned manually. Yeah. So that would be my prayer at the moment. But from a full, let's say, CIO storyline, yeah, the picture which we're heading towards is reducing operations efforts and doing that by raising quality and also focus on automation and testing. Yeah, that's more or less the story behind it. I would say so.
Yeah, I fully agree.
So yeah, thank you guys. I think we already on the end of our today's meetup, so time passed pretty soon. So for the last minutes, I want to say thank you to those who listened, and as well maybe a heads up for the next meetup. We're currently preparing a series where we will introduce, on the one hand, maybe cloud providers, and also talk to them about common issues or common ideas that we can create with them, as well as some comparison between. Also this meetups will be short breaks where we maybe, for instance, today was the idea of a micro frontend topic. So if you have any ideas or suggestions for the meetup, just write it in the comments below. And if you want also step up as a speaker, you're always welcome to do this. Just contact me on Meetup, LinkedIn, whatever, if you're on the Meetup page, you see my contacts, so just like write us there. So I hope you enjoyed it. The recordings will be available soon, I think in the next 2 days, hopefully. And thank you guys, and see you next time.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for the questions. Have been a great evening.